he said, I hope to provide you a little bit different perspective on this whole cloud gaming phenomenon that we all feel is primed to happen. Who I am is, like Gordon said, I've been around for about a little over 20 years doing stuff in gaming. Currently I manage game product development for TV and PC at AT&T. I do reside in the Uverse TV organization. So I'm mostly on the wireline side of the business, so please don't hit me up with a bunch of mobile game stuff. That's a different business group, although I'm connected to folks over there too. I used to be a strategic planner and also did game developer relations at Intel before that, and before that I was a magazine editor at GameSpot, a magazine called Inside PC Gaming, and a really old magazine called Computer Game Review. So why isn't AT&T interested in game streaming? I know we talked in general terms of cloud gaming, but that means different things. So I'm specifically focusing in on the game streaming portion of it. Well, probably the biggest reason is the network matters to the gameplay experience. If you have a crappy network connection, you're not going to have a good gameplay experience. Before that, when you're running games locally, it's about your processor, graphics card, console, etc. But now the network is really going to make a difference. Streaming games will consume a lot of data, and I'll show some really rough estimates that we did on that. But that's should be pretty obvious that that's a concern that a service provider would have. The streaming games will also need a lot of bandwidth, so you're going to need a pretty fat pipe to be able to do that in the home, but also do everything else you do that uses the internet. And also too, AT&T sees video as the next big thing. The reason for that is one, as you all know, there's increased use of over-the-top video services with Netflix, etc. And also people sharing videos more and more on social media. So where people would snap a picture at an event or something, now they're starting to take videos on their phones and sharing those, so that upload time starts to become just as important as the download. And AT&T is already investing in a video-centric network, both on the wireless and the wired side. Our CEO, Randall Stevenson, made a comment of the last 6 years have been about delivering data over our networks. The next 6 years are going to be about delivering video. So there's a lot of the capital expenditures going into improving that. So hypothetically, and this is a really big hypothetical, if all the gameplay in the US were streamed, in 2013 we did an estimate of how much data is being used on a wired network from games. And it's primarily game downloading because multiplayer games don't really consume a whole lot of data. We estimate it's about 770 petabytes. If you were to stream games at 720p this year, it'd be about 89,000, almost 90,000 petabytes. And the way we estimate that is we took the gamers spend in a household about 12 and a half hours of time playing per week. You multiply that out how many hours per year. If all the gameplay they did was streamed, not including mobile, by the way. I'm sorry, it is including mobile. That's how we came to that number. So obviously this is an extreme case, because not everyone's going to start streaming games overnight and do nothing else. But if you look at it in comparison to North American video data, it's at about 78,000 petabytes. Growing faster as more people start using the internet for video, but it starts to compare to that, and we don't. And the forecast we're doing for what we need out of our network doesn't necessarily take game streaming into account. So one of the things I've been doing is saying, okay, well, maybe this is something we should be taking a closer look at. Also too, in terms of like our data thresholds for your plans, if you break those same numbers down to what it would be on a monthly basis, it would be, and again, this is if you're doing nothing, taking all your game time and streaming, it's about 107 gigabytes at 720p and about 250 gig at 1080. On our Uverse plan, which is up to 45 megabytes, you have about 250 gig is where your threshold is. And so, yeah, if you have that plan and you're streaming all your games at 1080, you're going to run into some trouble. but again, that's an extreme case. As we get into our faster speeds, where we introduced UVerse with AT&T Gigapower, which is our all-fiber network, we're going at 500 gigabytes and up to a terabyte. So really, with everything else you're doing, you're probably not going to achieve that. And the other thing to consider too, even at our 150, our lower plan, which is a data threshold of 150 gigabytes, only about 2% of our current high-speed internet customers ever hit that. And if you do, because I know, the reason I wanted to bring this up too is because people talk about it and they get scared, but the realities of it is it's about 2%, and our policy is, this is on att.com if you want to check it out for yourself. You get a warning the first month you exceed it. The next month you get another warning if you exceed it. And then the third month we'll charge you $10 for an extra 50 megabytes. So it's not like, I'm sorry, gigabytes. So you're not going to be suddenly find, your bill just jumps up by some huge amount because you're consuming a lot of data. I mentioned UVerse with AT&T Gigapower, so if you haven't heard about it, because it's just starting to roll out, it's AT&T's all-fiber network, so it's fiber all the way to your home. Right now, it's available in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, but it's also coming to Cupertino, San Antonio, Houston, Overland, Kansas, Nashville, Miami, Savannah, and a bunch of cities in North Carolina. And this is a map you can see. I've got the URL down there. It's an interactive map, so if you want to get the latest to see if it's coming to your town, you can go check that out. So all the orange spots are where we're exploring next. But this is considered to be a big part of the future of our wired network. And two, this is a chart from a free source out there from the FCC. It's the 2014 Measuring Broadband in America. And what we're looking at here is if you use that the network shouldn't contribute more than 30 milliseconds of latency in that time when you're streaming a game. You can see that cable is a little erratic, and that it's right on that threshold. The orange triangles are the fiber part, so you can see kind of fiber is the only one who really stays under that threshold. And again, in the way that they do this is average latency, so there may be times where you're fine, but there's going to be times where you're going to run into some trouble. So from an AT&T's perspective, and me as a gaming guy at AT&T, this is good news to me. The Gigapower marketing guys are kind of excited about it too, because they're looking for things to justify why somebody would need 100 megabit pipe to their house. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. We also want to understand, where is this market? Is it ready to take off? Who's interested in it? And just to see, is there really a market for this? Is this something we should be thinking about? So we did some pretty extensive research this year with a company called Interpret. And it was twofold. We had a market segmentation, a gamer market segmentation, but it was a little bit old. I think we did about 5 years ago, so we didn't need it updating anyway. And then we also wanted to just test the concept of game streaming. So we did a quantitative study with a survey, and then we did a qualitative with focus groups. And out of those focus groups, we also went into people's homes. And if you've never gone into somebody's house to sit down with them and ask them about how they play games or just general behavior, it's pretty amazing. It's really insightful to hear how people think, what they do, and how they play. And our definition of a gamer is that they have to play at least 1 hour per week on any platform. So it's a pretty open, and any platform includes mobile. So it's a pretty open definition of who a gamer is. The segmentation looked at 2 areas: their gaming need states, and so it's like the emotional needs met by their gaming behavior, and then their gaming attitude. And that covers digital versus physical, game subscriptions, digital games, and game costs. And this, in a very general sense, and I know some of this stuff you're going to look at and go, yeah, when health freeze is over, are they ever going to get that? But this is what they're asking for. They want to play across platforms. That means buying a game once and being able to play it wherever they want. And I know we heard about, well, certain games need to be reconfigured to play on certain devices, and that's true. But in a lot of cases, to them it's just, if I buy it here, I want to be able to play it there. I want to be able to play it here, and when I leave the house, be able to continue to play it. The next one was they'll deal with long game downloads, but they don't like it. And a lot of the more casual people just don't do it because of that. It just takes too long, consume hard drive space, etc. So they want instant game access. The next thing is break down the wall for multiplayer gaming. We heard from folks on a number of occasions. It's like, I have an Xbox, I have a friend, he's got a PlayStation. Why can't we play Call of Duty together? This sucks. And so they don't really care about the business reasons why we do that, or why the console guys do that, etc. But they just don't like it. They think it doesn't make sense. Then the last thing is they want the ability to play games that are exclusive to one platform. So if I have a PlayStation, I want to be able to play Halo. We heard them ask for that a lot of times. Like I said, I know some of you are thinking, yeah, when hell freezes over, will that ever happen? But disruptions also happen in markets. From the segmentation, this is a segmentation we came up with, and we also measured their interest in a game streaming service. So we gave them a concept to look at, and we actually intentionally left the word streaming out of it completely because we didn't want them to come into it with some preconceived notion of what streaming is, and they start going, oh, that can't work because there'll be too much latency. So we just put words in like instant access, large catalog, things like that. So what we came up with is the Mr. Console Gamer. That's the obvious one everybody knows and loves. They prefer core console and PC gaming over mobile and casual games, but that doesn't mean they don't play those as well. They're really interested in a game service. The gamer couples were probably the ones, I'll talk a little bit more about this segment in a bit, but they're probably the ones that surprised us the most, and we had to poke at it on a few occasions to say, is this really, does this really come out of the data? And it certainly did. There are people who love playing with their spouses or partners, as well as their friends and offspring. So I've seen them, kind of labeled as social gamers, but it's a little bit more than that. And they like the core experience, mostly on consoles, but they also like casual, mostly on mobile, and they're also really interested in a game streaming service. Budget gamers are a little more solitary than other segments. They tend to play alone a bit more. And they prefer console and PC gaming with a mix of some core and casual genres. They're highly value focused. So they, before they buy a game, they're the ones who are figuring out where's the sale, how can I get this for less? And they don't run out and buy games at the store as soon as it comes out. They wait to be able to get it less expensive. And a lot of times they're households with unlimited incomes, whether it's like a single parent or a young person who doesn't have a lot of money. What we found was that they could be won over a game streaming service on value of accessing a broad portfolio. So they are willing to say, I'll pay X amount of dollars per month and get a lot of games. Then there was a Miss Mobile Gamer who's overwhelmingly focused on mobile casual games. They're moderately interested in the service, but they're a little more at odds with the other segments about what features the service should have. And they're kind of seeking a comparatively casual experience based on mobile devices. So they're sort of, more female, highly focused, spend most of their time playing on mobile. And then there's the Miss PC Puzzler, who's the typical casual gamer that we also know who plays on the PC. They don't really have much interest in a game streaming service. On the far side there, that's how they break down. So you can see these segments are actually distributed pretty evenly. But on this side, it's their interest in top box interest, so very interested in the game streaming service. And you can see the core gamers at 29% are the group that represents the most interest, but also the gamer couples at 24% and the budget gamers at 19% are most interested. So it seems like that these top three would be the ones you'd want to target with the service. The biggest surprises from the research. Like I said, I've been in this business for 20 years. Usually, wherever company I'm at, we do a segmentation study every few years. But this year, it probably surprised me the most, and most was these couple gamers, right? And you can break them up into two groups. They're the younger ones and the older ones. But it's still all about bonding. It's about getting together with that significant other and playing games together. The younger ones tend to be the young couples, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, or they just got married, but they don't have kids yet. But they both like to play games, so in their spare time, when they're working 12 hours a day, they want to get home and play, and it's the only time where they get to spend time together. But then there's the older, which is more the husband and wife with probably a kid in the house. For them, it's also about bonding with each other, but also with the entire family. So, like one of them said, I like when everyone can play at once and you can be active. It's family oriented. So that was a really surprising segment that we came out. But then going into the focus groups and the ethnographies, digging into a little bit further, they absolutely exist. And what I think it is too, I think it's sort of an extension of the idea of the lapsed gamer, because especially in the older gamer couples, where you've got the dad used to be a pretty heavy gamer, then a kid came along, and now he can't play, like the picture that the PlayStation Now folks showed, where he's kind of this crazy busy life with a baby in his hands, doesn't let him play games much anymore. But now the kid's gotten older and he can play games with him, and it gives him an excuse to buy the latest, greatest games. So now dad and the kid are playing games a lot. Well, what's mom gonna do? And it was really funny to hear the mom saying, yeah, I started playing games too, because they were upstairs playing and I got left out, and I was just saying, you guys sound like you're having a lot of fun, what are you doing? Well, here, let me show you how to play. And all of a sudden mom's in there getting beat up in Call of Duty as well. But they're all together bonding. The other thing was they all play a significant amount of mobile and retro games. The mobile games probably shouldn't be too surprising since everyone has a smartphone, but the retro games was the part that was a little bit surprising. And that was, again, across pretty much all three of those top segments, was that people keep old Nintendos around, and they either have them in a closet or they have them plugged into a second TV. And when they're, and even the core gamers said, yeah, when I get a group of friends together, we want to play something that everybody can play. So we play a Nintendo game, Mario Kart or something like that. And for even some of the older people, there's parents that have memories of playing these games or their kids playing them when they were younger. And there's a nostalgia to them to go back and play those games again. And so that was really a surprise that how many people still, it was predominantly Nintendo as well. Hardly anyone rents. We asked everyone, do you ever rent a game? And pretty much everyone said no. A lot of people said they tried GameFly and they had a game sitting around for 6 months and never played it, so they ended up just canceling their subscription. They don't use Redbox. The only ones that really do is sometimes they'll go rent a game to try it before they go out and buy it. Or it'll be like for their kids. They want to get something for their kids to play for a few hours one night because they're babysitting their niece and nephew or something like that. But it's kind of a temporary. We just need it for one night. We're not going to keep playing it. They all spend most of their time playing a small number of games, but they still want variety. So the core gamers will always like Call of Duty or Battlefield or something like that. And they spend a lot of their gaming time playing those, but what happens is sometimes they say, you know what, I'm not really in the mood for that. I want to take a break, or I've only got 15 minutes, so I don't have time to dig in and play for 30 minutes or an hour, so I don't even want to touch that more core game. So I wish I had a way to just have a bunch of games available that I can have that instant access to without any hassles. The next thing was they don't care about their console hardware, even the core guys. In fact, if anything, I'd say it's a little more of a nuisance. They got like a price of entry. You got to buy the hardware if you want to play those games, so you just got to do it. But they do have strong preferences for a game controller, and it was split pretty evenly between the Xbox 360 controller and the PS3. And we even heard people say, oh, I can't stand the Xbox controller. I don't know how that just doesn't feel right in my hands and vice versa. So that was interesting about the idea of a console loyalist. I don't think really exists that much, but they do like the controllers. The last thing was that there are a lot of passionate, engaged, knowledgeable female gamers. And like I said, we were into a couple households where there were single moms, and they had kids that played too, but Boy, when we started asking them questions, they knew their stuff. They knew about technology, they knew about the latest games, they knew where to buy them, they knew what they wanted. And so that was a big surprise, just because in this industry we're used to, it's all about the Mr. Core console gamer. But there's a lot of real, and they're playing the core games too. They're not playing, there were some moms who really like the dance games because it's kind of exercise forms of it, but they're playing Call of Duty as well. Then when we asked about the game streaming service, what we found from that was a little over half of households, first let me get into a little more than half of have more than one gamer in it. And the reason that's important for a game service is because one of the things that we do at AT&T, when you sell a service, you sell it to a household, you don't sell it to an individual. There might be an individual who's the main decision maker, but if something isn't of value to everybody, then chances are that family's not going to sign up for that service. So the fact that there's more than one gamer is important, and there could be households where they live alone, so it's irrelevant. But and a little over half of all the segments are at least somewhat interested. So the top two boxes are somewhat interested or very interested. So we think that's pretty significant too. Just from reading a concept, we didn't put anything in their hands to play. We just gave them a concept of what a service like this could deliver, and we got top two box interest out of half of them. And I already mentioned about the controller. They said, this sounds really interesting, but it's got to have an Xbox or PS3 controller to use to be able to play the games. And as far as like how many games they want in the service to be willing to subscribe, it was around 75 to 100. It's not a ton. What was interesting was it wasn't the amount of games, it was the variety of games. Like they said, well, if it was just all shooter games or all this game, then no, I'm not interested in that, because I don't play all shooter games. I play one shooter game. I play one favorite racing game or one sports